Hey, welcome to October's monthly market report. We are seeing mortgage rates skyrocketing to almost 8%. There are things that we can't control, but today I want to focus on things that we can control. And the thing that we can control right now is where is the mortgage rate going to be? Where are the opportunities? Where do these opportunities exist? I'm also going to be debunking some of the myths floating out there, so be sure to watch till the end of the video so you're fully equipped and aware of the real estate market right now. First off, let's attack the three myths that are confusing many people right now. Myth number one, foreclosures are increasing. There are more and more headlines popping up saying the foreclosure rates are increasing, and they are not wrong. It's true that the foreclosure rate is increasing. However, what they are comparing to is the foreclosure rate today to 2 years ago, when the foreclosure rate was bottomed out. To give you a visual explaining this, the red bars all the way to the right of the second half of 2022 and 2023 are definitely up. Remember, we had an anomaly years in the past few years. We also call these years the unicorn years. During these years, it was almost impossible to foreclose on a property. So even though the percentage of foreclosures went up, we are not in any means at a foreclosure crisis. Myth number two, Airbnb is about to go out of business and they're going to crash the housing market. This is simply not true. There was a viral tweet that went out earlier this year that got a lot of attention from the media, and it turned out that the data he was using to explain this was not accurate. This does not mean there's not going to be an impact on the market, just saying this is not going to crash the market. If you currently own an Airbnb, you need to watch carefully to what I'm going to show you. You might be thinking of jumping into a long-term rental property instead of selling your property, and I'm going to show you in this video why that might not be the best idea. There was a census released by Realtor.com, and the survey showed that 59.8% of sellers who are selling their house would consider renting out their current house rather than sell it, if they were to buy or rent another home in the future. That's 6 out of 10 that are saying, yeah, I'd consider renting my house in the short-term rental. Approximately 20% said it would be a great idea to have an extra income from a renter, and approximately 18% said the idea of owning a rental or investment property appeals to them. Also, if you have a 3% interest rate on your current home, you might not be inclined. Also, if you have a 3% interest rate on your current home, you might be more inclined to rent it out instead as well. Now, if you've never been a landlord, being a landlord is a business, and you have to understand the business of being a landlord. Everybody wants to say they are the landlord. They want to have a tenant that's bringing in that extra money. But they don't want that call at 3 o'clock in the morning saying that the toilet's not working. They also don't want that call in the last storm, a tree came through and knocked the roof open, and the tenant is now refusing to pay rent because it's not livable. Although being a landlord might sound cool, there are a lot of business aspects that you might not be taking into consideration. There are a lot of cities across the country that are putting extra restrictions on Airbnbs, trying to curtail the amount and actually lessen the amount that are already in the city. For example, New York City came out with the New York City Law 18 that really put a major restrictions on Airbnbs. What was the impact of those restrictions? Well, on June 4th, this past June 4th, there were 22,500 short-term rental listings in New York City. Airbnbs, Verbos, whatever the case may be, that number fell to 4,600 after the law was passed. That means there are about 17,000 people that were renting their house out as a short-term rental that no longer can. And of course, here in Dallas, many cities implementing different restrictions as well. Plano and Frisco both have a temporary ban on short-term rentals as well. So what's the plausible solution? It may be time to cash in, and you'll see here in a minute why. Myth number three, Wall Street is buying up all the homes. That's why we are short in inventory for all the first-time home buyers out there. This is also not true. Let's take a look at this year. Total purchase by size of investors. First, starting with iBuyers and then those investors that own more than 8,000 properties. These will be your institutional investors. They are the Wall Street investors. Well, they're not buying the dominant number of homes or the prominent number of homes on the market as investors. Then take a look at the percentage visual. The vast majority of investors are mom and pop investors. Perhaps someone like your neighbor. They may own 1 or even 3 homes on the same block or in the neighborhood. John Burns Consultant adjusted a survey and it showed that the 7% of sellers that want to rent their home because of mortgage rates instead of selling it. So people that are buying a home have a house to sell or they live in a current house that they own. They're looking to buy a house. 7% have decided that they want to rent it out instead of selling it. And we can see what those numbers are across the country. But this is what's happening in the market right now. Apartment constructions is soaring along at a 40-year high. That means more choices for renters, likely at a lower rents as everyone fights for those tenants. And that already had an impact on a lot of rental owners. A survey just done by Billiam showed that 32% of rental owners plan to sell their properties in the next 2 years to come. That's 1 out of 3 investors that are saying, you know what, now it's time to go ahead and get the house in the market. But what that means for me is that we are going to have more inventory. And I think it's already starting. Here's a quote from the senior economist at Zillow. What we didn't expect, especially considering 7+% mortgage rates, was more new listings. Now remember, we have active listings which have been high for a couple of months now. And new listings keep on falling. And that is a seasonal pattern. But this last month, that's recorded the month of August going from July to August, the September numbers are not in as of yet. For the first time in 7 years that we have data for the amount of new listings coming to the market increased, didn't decrease. Now, who are those people ready to make the move? Well, we know about the rate lock. We know that the vast majority of people have very low interest rates right now. As a matter of fact, 70.7% of all current mortgages are lower than 4%, and 90% have mortgage rates that are lower than 5%. Let's take a closer look at this. If you have a 3% mortgage shown by the blood red in the upper right hand quadrant, you're not going to sell, most likely. If you have a 4% mortgage rate between 3 and 4, you're probably not going to sell. Between 4 and 5, you need to think really hard before selling. Now, if you have between 5 and 6 or even in the 7s, you're probably going to sell. And here it is. If we look to the left-hand side of this, we can see about 1 in 4 US homeowners, 26% say high mortgage rates would not impact their decisions on when to sell their home. 1 out of 4 saying interest rates have nothing to do with whether or not they're going to sell the house. We go to the right of those 26%, 43% say it's because they would not need a mortgage to buy a new home. And if we break down that 43%, this is what we realize. 35% are baby boomers, 23% are Gen X. And let's take a look at that a little bit closer. This is the amount of price which have gone up in the past 5 years in the country. If you look down at the bottom middle, the national average is 57.3% in the 5 years. That means if you had a $400,000 house 5 years ago, that house is now worth about $600,000. So if you have that extra $200,000 equity and whatever you paid over that past 5 years in mortgage, that is your equity. But if we go 32 years back to 1991, we can see that the national average price went up almost 300%. If you bought the house 30 years ago, you're sitting on a tremendous amount of equity right now. How much equity? 38.7% of Americans today own their house free and clear. 30% have more than 50% equity, meaning if they own a $400,000 house, they have at least $200,000 in equity. And then you look all the way around the corner, even if we go down to 0 to 9% equity, that's minimal equity. That's only less than 2% of the people in the country. The average US homeowner now has about $290,000 in equity, and this equity gives you advantages in the market today. Since the pandemic, perhaps it's from the division that we had, grandparents are finding themselves wanting to be closer to their grandchildren. This is certainly true in my family. My parents are extremely close to my daughter, but there are some upsides to this as well. According to the banking rates, never underestimate the power of grandchildren, especially when it comes to lifestyle and financial decisions. Recent data shows that many baby boomers are relocating further away from home than they are used to so that they could be closer to their grandbabies. And let's break it down to numbers. 77% of all sellers have no children living at home when they sell their house. They are empty nesters. 77% have no children when they sell their home, 10% have one child. Here's an interesting thing. When we think about the grandfather ages between 55 and 74, that's the highest percentage of sellers who move at least 800 miles away. People of grandfather age are the highest percentage by a lot of the people that are selling and moving away more than 100 miles away. What my argument is that they are moving to be closer to family, closer to their grandchildren. Now you might say, well, they might be moving to a retirement community. They might be moving down south where it's warmer weather. There's definitely some of that as well. But if you take a look at the survey that are done, the number one reason is because they want to move closer to friends or family. The grandparent wish is real. And if you want to make this wish come true, let's connect and see how I can help you find your place right next to them. Now let's jump to the current home price appreciation. First of all, from the Wall Street Journal, home prices aren't falling anymore. The surprisingly quick recovery suggests that the residential real estate downturn is turning out to be shorter and shallower than many housing economists expected. After the mortgage rates soared last year, remember all those projections that prices are going to fall 20%, 10%, 5%? Well, they fell for a little bit of time and then they came right back again. From January through August, housing demand stabilized, resulting in a relatively stable home prices. Now, by August 2023, national resale home prices fully recovered in the second half of 22 and now exceeded the April 22 peak. We had that fall off and then came back. According to Freddie Mac, overall, it appears the reduction in supply has outweighed the decrease in demand. Those housing prices have started to increase even as sales have fallen, and let's prove that with data. Look at the Case-Shiller, the FHFA, and the CoreLogic report. Let's see what has happened at the beginning of last year. Price appreciated way too much, much greater than they should have. Then there needed to be a correction, and there was, shown by the red bars, and now the appreciation is much more on the historical norm. So those are 3 indexes. Here's another 3. They are all showing the same thing. As a matter of fact, the FHFA shows that in every single region of the country, prices are up. And if we go to the Case-Shiller, every single of the 20 cities that they cover, all 20 cities are up. Dallas is doing pretty well, and the Austin region is still having some challenges. Then where are we headed in terms of appreciation? So prices aren't falling, but the speed of acceleration is decreasing. Kind of like you're driving uphill, you're still going, but not as fast as you were on a flat road. What I want to do is give you 6 of the year-end forecasts that just came out. American Enterprise Institute, Zillow, Fannie Mae, the Home Price Expectation Survey, which we'll talk about in a second, Mortgage Bankers Association, and NAR. NAR is the only one that is projecting that the prices will be less at the end of this year than they were at the end of last year. Everyone else is saying that the prices are going to be higher. The national or the average of all 6 of them is 3.3%. Now, the Home Price Expectation Survey, which I just mentioned, is a nationwide panel of over 100 economists, real estate experts, and investments and market strategists. They project 5 years out. This is what they project for the next 5 years. Just like the average of those 6 others was 3.3%, and they are looking at a 3.32%. I hope that I gave you a lot of information today. I hope you can use some of it. One of the biggest takeaway is that if we take a look at, even at this slide, if you are an investor, whether you were an Airbnb investor, whether you are a mom and pop investor that owned 3 or 4 homes that you rented year round, you made a fortune over the last couple of years. You are not going to make a fortune over the next maybe couple of years. Maybe it's time to cash in, and if you are needing guidance or someone to have your back on that journey, I want you to feel comfortable and reach out to me. All my contact information is down this video. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I know it's a lot of information, but critical information to absorb so that you can steer clear in this confusing market. I will see you in the next video. Stay sharp, and in Sold We Trust.